Hey guys, you need to check out my new favorite podcast called the Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Hockey Card Podcast. In the latest episode, Jay goes over the upcoming Toronto Sports Card Expo happening this week. He also reveals his NHL Power Rankings, as well as his predictions for each series in Round 1. So give a listen to my friend Jay's latest episode. You will not be disappointed.
The Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Hockey Card Podcast. Talking playoffs, every goal hits fast. From the rink to the mic, future turn to past. We're living the hype, we're built to last. Skates cut sharp, the boards they shake. Chasing legends, history is at stake. Toronto calling cards in hand. We'll go the Expos buzzing with the brightest glow. The Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Hockey Card Podcast.
Hello, hockey card fans and hockey fans as well. Welcome to the Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Hockey Card Podcast, episode number 95. We have a great show in store for you today, as you heard from the intro. But before we get into any of those topics, let's take a quick look as far as what's going on in the news. First, congratulations to the Canadiens who clinched a first-round playoff berth with their victory over the Hurricanes. Very solid win, but the Hurricanes also were missing players like Aho, so they didn't have their full gambit of players. But still, Canadiens, you got in. That's all that matters. On top of that, the Wild clinched a playoff spot along with the Golden Knights on the same night. Marc Fleury, the Flower, earns one last victory before he hangs it up. We want to wish the Flower the best of luck, whatever career he decides to go into, because he was a great figure in the NHL. He was a polarizing, funny, and talented NHL hockey star. And so we want to wish him and his family the best, and thank you so much for many years of great play and great entertainment. Next in the news, Jason Robertson left the Stars' regular season finale game with a lower body injury, according to their coach. Now, the severity of the injury isn't known yet, but you know how these things work out sometimes. We're just waiting to see if Jason Robertson will be in the lineup for Game 1 of their playoff series. Chris Letang of the Pittsburgh Penguins has surgery to repair a hole in his heart. We wish him the best. Speedy recovery. This is a serious subject. He's a great player, so we want to wish Chris Letang all the best, and hopefully we could see him on the ice next year. On top of the Canadiens clinching a playoff spot, the Wild clinched a playoff spot along with other teams like the Blues. Now the Wild will be playing the Golden Knights, and the Blues ended a 2-year drought and will face the Jets in the first round. We're going to go over every single one of the matchups later on in the episode. Next, the Oilers' Darnell Nurse is suspended 1 game for cross-checking Quinton Byfield. Now, it won't be a playoff game that he's suspended for, but it will be for the last regular season game. Darn it, I bet you he's upset. On top of that, Connor McDavid reaches 100 points for the season again, hitting a milestone for doing it 8 times. I don't think this is too much of a surprise. Connor McDavid is pretty much expected to probably hit 100 points every season, probably even more than that. This is actually a little bit of a down year possibly for Connor McDavid, but hopefully he's ready for the playoff push because now hockey gets serious. So there you have it. There's some quick NHL news. We've gone through the news. Now we just got to do one more thing. Now the good thing is, you, the good listener, don't have to do anything. You just have to listen. So take a listen to the little jingle on why this podcast is not a financial advice podcast.
This podcast is not financial advice, but I'll make you think twice, maybe thrice. I'm a lighthouse beaming through the vice. This podcast is not financial advice.
Well, there's another catchy little jingle for everybody right there. But as always, as we say on this podcast, you can listen to us to maybe get some ideas or other podcasts or YouTube channels, but when it comes right down to it, you need to do the right thing, and that's do your own homework, do your own research, And at the end of it all, you need to feel good about the deal. Trust your gut, but make sure you put in the time. Let's get into our first segment of today, and we're going to take a look at the Toronto Sports Card Expo. That's right, it's that time of year again, and Toronto Sports Card Expo is right around the corner. Matter of fact, it is literally 1 week away from the recording of this episode. I'm ecstatic about this year's show. I'm ecstatic about every year's show. If you don't know what this is, it's simply the greatest hockey card expo or card show, I would say, in the world. Now, I know there's other great card shows all over the place like Dallas and London and LA and Vegas, and I'm sure they have great cards. I'm sure there's some great hockey cards there as well. But when it comes to the amount of hockey cards you're going to see under one roof, you can't beat the Toronto Sports Card Expo. Now, it's held at the end of April, so I believe it's on April 23rd. It's April 24th through the 27th. It's held at the Mississauga International Convention Center, which is a great facility. It's a giant facility, has a lot of parking. We're going to kind of go over all that stuff once we get into this topic a little further, but just know that this is a perfect place to have this show. Now, if you've listened to this podcast regularly, and I'm going to say it again, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but we have talked about the Toronto Sports Card Expo, what you can expect, how much things cost, where to stay if you need to stay, things you got to keep in mind, as well as the cost. We're not going to go through all that stuff in this segment, but we're just going to kind of take the highlights that I think are important for people to kind of think about and remember before the show starts. First and foremost, you want to think about tickets. Are you going to purchase your tickets in advance, or are you going to pick them up at the show? So here's a little insider tip that I learned last year that I guess I'll share with all my great listeners out there. So if you're not listening, you're not going to get this tip. What I learned was last year, I purchased my tickets in advance. Now, when I got there at the opening on Friday, which it opens at 11 o'clock a.m., I noticed that the line to get in for people with pre-purchased tickets was around the bend. Now, what I kind of was watching is a lot of people were kind of going and cutting the line, and they weren't doing this just to, beat us all out. They were going in to purchase their tickets. So what I decided to do is jump out of line, go purchase my tickets right then and there, and I went by a lot of people, took me no time to get my tickets, and I was in the show. So there's something to think about. Unless you have a VIP ticket that lets you right through the doors, you may have to wait in that line, and there's a lot of eager hockey card collectors on all the days, bright and early, to be one of the first ones through the door. So maybe you think about the idea like I said. If you don't want to wait in that line, maybe you take a chance and you purchase your tickets the day of the event that you are attending. Now, you can also purchase your tickets, say if you go on Thursday, you can purchase for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or whatever days you're going to attend it at that moment. So it's up to you. If you do order it online as far as the tickets, you will get a little bit of a discount. But at the same time, you may have to stand in that line as mentioned. Now, with that being said, the line does move pretty quickly. It's just that there's a lot of people. So there's the first thing you want to consider is tickets. When do you want to get them? The next thing is, if you're coming from a far distance, you're probably going to need to stay the night or a couple of nights. Now, I would highly recommend that you search out the areas as far as the different hotels there. There's a ton of them. It's great that this event is held right near the Toronto airport, XYZ. If you're a Rush fan, you know what that means. There's a lot of different hotels around there, so you have a lot of different options. One thing I would ask, or I should say one thing I would mention, be sure that you check out the hotels as far as the quality of them. Don't just look at the price. Because there's a lot of hotels in that area, you can have some pretty seedy hotels that maybe you don't want to stay in, especially if you're bringing your kids. So definitely check that out before you do that. Now, as far as when it comes to hotels and travel, are you going to be crossing into the country? Now, I've crossed over into Canada and back again a number of times, and I've never had an issue. Now, some people have reached out to me and said, are you a little bit worried about kind of what's going on, with the politics in our country? And is that going to affect us when we go into Canada and then when we come back? Here's what I'm going to say to that. I don't think it's going to affect you if you just play things honestly. Here's what I mean by that. When you get to the border, obviously, you need your passport to cross into the country. They're going to ask you what you're doing, where are you going. Tell them you're going to a trade show in Mississauga. Notice I use the word trade show. You can say trading card show, hobby show, anything like that. The question they're going to ask you next is, well, are you bringing anything in? Do you have to declare anything? Be honest with them. Tell them the truth. Because if they even catch a glimpse that maybe you may not be telling the truth, you're going to get pulled over and they're going to go through their paces to make sure that everything's okay. So as far as crossing the border, be nice, be calm, tell the truth. You won't have a problem. While you're traveling in the great country of Canada, another thing you need to kind of keep in mind is they don't have the same financial setup that we do, meaning they don't really use American dollars in Canada. Not saying that they don't accept it, it's just that it's a little more difficult for them, so they tend to basically stay away or shy away from it. I would highly recommend that either you get some money in advance from your bank, that's the Canadian money, the really cool different colors and all that, get that in advance, or once you get into Canada, you can go to an ATM, you can pull out cash, and this way you can have their money. Why I say this is important, if you're going to the expo, it's a lot easier to deal in their money, and it makes them feel like you're serious about this, and it's not insulting. I've always said, when you're in a different country, just because we come from America doesn't mean that they have to cater to us. We are their guests, so let's abide by their rules. When it comes to Canadian money, then there's an exchange rate, meaning for the value of $1, you're going to get X amount either higher or lower than what our dollar is. Currently, as of the recording of this episode, the exchange rate is for every US dollar, you get about $1.38 Canadian, plus or minus somewhere in there. So essentially, you're getting almost 40% more for your dollar. Keep that in mind. The next thing you need to keep in mind is when you're at the expo, be sure to ask whoever you're talking to when it comes to money, is that in US dollars or Canadian dollars? 95% of the time, it's going to be in Canadian dollars. But there are a couple of US vendors up there who, for some reason, decide to leave all their stuff marked in US dollars. Again, if we're talking about a 40% difference, you want to make sure you know what you're dealing in. I would highly also recommend that you get an app that does a conversion rate for you. This way, so when someone says, hey, I'll take $1,000 for that Canadian, you know that's roughly about $600 to $700 US. But when you start getting into bigger numbers or you're in the middle of a deal, it could be hard to kind of think that quickly. Hence, that's what the app's for. Okay, so you've traveled to the show, you got across the border, you picked up your Canadian money, so you're ready to go. You've either purchased your tickets or you're skipping the line kind of, and you're going to buy your tickets. Now you are in the show.
I am inevitable.
Well, what can you expect from the show? The first thing you're going to see when you walk through those doors is just hockey card tables that go on what it seems like forever. Now, I'm not saying there's just hockey cards at this show. All other sports are represented. Pokemon is very well represented along with the rest of the TCG world. Hockey, though, is still the major thing you're going to see there. Whether it's hockey cards or hockey memorabilia or hockey equipment, there is, I would probably venture to say, about 85%. Now, let me take that back. About 75% hockey, and then the 25% Majority of that is going to be Pokemon and then the other sports after that. But there's also a lot of memorabilia as far as outside of sports. There's movie stars, there's musicians, there's tables that has a lot of cool stuff like money for sale. People collect coins, they collect dollars. Whatever you can think of, that's what's under this roof. And when you first walk through the door, it's going to be overwhelming for you. I know the first time that I went, it took me about a half an hour just to kind of get the feel of the show, the bearings of the show. Oh, and I went on Thursday, which is a very light day as far as people goes. If your first day is going to be like Saturday, expect a huge crowd, and you really need to kind of just take a minute to take it all in, get your bearings, understand the flow, and you'll be fine. Now, once you get walking around the show, one thing you will probably want to have in advance is comfortable shoes. The event hall is, as I mentioned before, a great place, but you're still walking around essentially on concrete for what could be 8 hours and then some. There's a lot of square footage that needs to be covered if you're going to see everything, and you're going to be doing a lot of standing. Now, there are areas mixed in throughout the show that, you can sit down. There's a little food court. They have chairs and seats and tables there. They do fill up pretty quickly around lunchtime, but people are usually pretty good about that and move in and out. As far as chairs or places to sit on the showroom floor, well, good luck with that. There's not a lot of room for that. What you basically have are tables on both sides of the aisle and a little aisle down the middle of all of it, and there's a lot of people moving, so that's why you really can't have a lot of seats and chairs. You can go to such places like Upper Deck has a little showroom, if you would, and they have chairs where you can rip stuff. Now, you can't just go in there and sit there and kind of hang out. They want you to be opening boxes or something like that. But again, it's available to you. Now, once you are walking around, the other thing is just be polite. That's the biggest thing. We're all there to have fun. We're not there to start fights. We're not there to get in arguments. We're there to have fun. So be polite to one another. And I will say this, going to a number of these Toronto Sports Card Expo shows, the Canadian people are some of the nicest people you will ever meet. They want to talk hockey. I can't tell you how many times I would talk to people I've never met and probably had some of the best conversations in my life. So again, be nice, be respectful, give some space to people. Don't always feel like you got to be at the front of the line and get out of my way type of scenario, because again, when you get to Saturday and Sunday, there's a lot of people that are going to be there. So the nicer you are to them, they should be back to you. The other thing you want to be mindful of is stay hydrated. It's very easy to get caught up in the hoopla and the event, and the next thing you know, you've been standing on your feet for 5, 6 hours and you haven't had any water or maybe any food or maybe you used the restroom. Definitely keep that stuff in mind. Pace yourself. Take breaks every so often. The good thing is, if you sit down and take a break, I should mention this. There is a little hall, I guess you could say, or room off the main room where they do have a lot of tables and there are chairs there. It's kind of like if you think of going to a hotel, the little banquet rooms they have. Basically, that's what it is. So you can go in there and sit, you can eat, you can have, some water. And the great part about it, there's going to be other people coming in, probably sitting down next to you at the table because room is limited. And guess what you're going to do? You're going to meet a new hockey or hobby friend, and you're going to have a really cool conversation. He's probably going to ask, or she's going to ask, what kind of cards you're looking for, what have you picked up, vice versa. You're going to meet some really, really nice people. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of meeting people that have the same interests as you do. Now, when you get to the actual deal part, here's one thing I would highly recommend too. A lot of the tables will have cards with their asking prices already on them. We mentioned before, ask if it's Canadian or US. And then from there, definitely make sure you look at comps. We've preached that. I think every card podcast / YouTube channel preaches that. Look at the comps. Now, when you do that, one thing I'm going to kind of throw caution into the wind is this. you will get to a point when the show gets filled up to where your phone's not going to really work too well. Obviously, you're not on Wi-Fi. They don't let that out. I think they just give it to the vendors so they have access to it. If you know somebody, well, maybe you get on that way. But if you're relying on your network, like Verizon's network, you will have points when you won't be able to look things up like eBay or Market Movers or any kind of sites you use. So what I recommend is before you get to the show, I would definitely make a list on your phone, put it in notes, something like that, of the cards that you're really looking for. So for instance, if you're looking for an Austin Matthews PSA 10 Young Guns rookie card, and let's say that their average value is $850 US, you should put that on your list, that's the value as of a few days before you went to the show. The other thing I would do is say, if you put down the US value of that card, so if we say it's $800, I would put right next to that in quotes, what is the equivalent of that in Canadian? Because here's what happens sometimes. You may look at that card and you see that Austin Matthews PSA 10, you go, wow, this guy wants $1,300 for that card. It's only selling for between $800 and $900. There's the slippery slope. He's thinking Canadian, you're thinking US. So that's why it's just a good practice, or I guess you could say thing to do beforehand, so you understand the value and can have a quick lookup. This way you can have a bunch of cards on there and know what roughly the value is, even if you don't have cell service. So definitely do that before the show. You could do it at the hotel the night before or at the hotel during, or you can walk outside and even try to connect back up in case there's something you really want to look at. You can also ask people there. I know the vendors are more than happy, most of them I should say, to help you out with that. If you want to make a deal in a card that they have, but you can't get an idea on a comp, ask them to show you what the comps are. Again, have the conversation, be polite, try to work something out. Now, lastly, if you can't work something out, again, be nice. There will be another card somewhere down the road that you will find that will replace that one you didn't get. So again, I'm preaching this be nice thing because right now in today's society, unfortunately, we're on the edge. And I think a lot of people are looking to yell at people. Well, let's just have fun at the show. Another tip that I would highly kind of suggest to you is this. Take in all the great events that happen during the show. One of the events that happens that I really like is they have a stage where they will have podcasters or influencers or just people from the hobby interviewing in their genre, if you would, but they also allow them to interview NHL stars. I know a couple of people, friends of mine who have podcasts or have YouTube channels, and they've interviewed some pretty big names like Teemu Selanne. I think one year someone I know had Eddie Belfour. On top of that, there are a lot of events at vendor stations. So Upper Deck has giveaways. Some of the bigger influencers or bigger tables will have constant giveaways. So just be mindful of all that. Take it in. Go check out who's on the stage, who's having an interview, because again, you're going to see some really cool content, especially if it's something like in hockey or hockey cards. Where else do you go in this world to really hear that? You can go on YouTube, and there's a few channels that talk about hockey cards as far as their major information source, but majority of the world kind of ignores hockey cards, and that's unfortunate for them. So again, take in all that stuff. Now, another thing you're going to want to do is, do you want to get something signed while you're at this event? If you didn't know this, they have a large roster of, let's call them athletes, let's call them stars, they have a number of famous people coming in that will sign things. Now, you have to purchase tickets in advance if you want something signed. So go on the Toronto Sports Card Expo website, see the list of people that are there, and if you want, purchase your tickets in advance. There's something that I would definitely say, don't wait, because those tickets sell out fast, and usually you can't buy them when you're at the venue. So get the tickets for the autographs that you want. Now, one last thing I want to mention as far as the show goes and kind of the little things that people might not know about. The show offers, basically, I should say, Upper Deck offers a program that if you buy boxes or certain boxes of cards that they have on a list, you will get basically a free pack of their Upper Deck show cards. So let's say they have, and I know this for a fact, 24-25 Upper Deck Series 2, Celebrini, Michkov, all those guys. If you buy one of those boxes and you go to the Upper Deck station or the Upper Deck display area, they will take the box, they will just slice open the seal, so this way you can't keep coming back and get more packs, and they will give you a pack of cards, and it's basically, cards aren't their typical cards, it's for events. And I have to admit, there's some really cool cards in there. So again, the idea is you buy this box off their list, the ones that they, want you to buy, you will get a free pack of cards for every box you get. Now, if you buy a whole case of cards, there's bigger prizes you get for that. So again, check out their website. You'll see it all on there. Now, where can you find the people that sell these boxes? There's something that I had to learn when I first went. Once you see what the boxes are, all you have to do is look up in the air. What do I mean by that? As you're walking around, whoever is a certified vendor that they will acknowledge that you bought the box from them and will give you the free pack of cards, this is Upper Deck, they will have a gold balloon, a gold star balloon flying over their table. So all you have to do is find the gold star balloon, and if you buy one of those boxes from that list that Upper Deck puts out, you will be guaranteed a free pack of cards for every box. Now, one thing I will say with that is you can still walk around and compare prices on those boxes. You may find that there's a table or two that there's a little bit of difference, maybe a little bit lower, maybe a little bit higher. But definitely check that out. You can negotiate with them too. But usually when it comes to those special boxes that they know people are looking for, that they're going to get their free pack, they all kind of stay in that same price point and don't really stray too far off it. Like I said, you may be able to save $5 here and there, but for the most part, you're going to pay what they're all asking. But if you buy multiple boxes, well, now they'll give you a little bit more of a deal. So just something to keep in mind. If you're going to buy boxes of these cards that are on that list, definitely get them from those certified vendors so you get a little free gift. So I've given you some just quick tips or tricks or things I've learned as far as, getting to the show and before you get to the show, and then you're at the show, and then dealing with things at the show and things to look for. Now I just want to get into something a little more important, and that's your safety. Now, as I said before, the Canadian people are wonderful people as a whole. But as always, there are going to be people who are not so scrupulous as the rest of us are, and they may be looking to take advantage of you or someone else. So one of the things I like to say to people is be cordial, be friendly, be outgoing, talk to people, but still keep your guard up a little bit as far as just things, your surroundings, what have you. Especially if you're going with young ones. You parents, please make sure you keep an eye on your kids. This is just something that I've noticed at the shows, to where parents get so involved in things that are going on that they forget that they may have a little one kind of walking around or wandering off. I know most parents do a great job with that, but just keep an eye on your kids. Older kids, just be careful. If you need help, ask for help. There are definitely a lot of security around there, a lot of organized, people from the event hall. You can always find them very easily. Again, I know this is kind of the dark side of it, but please be safe up there. Now that's inside the show. Once you get outside the show, same thing, especially if you're from the US or from another country. Again, Canadians are super nice, great people, but at the same time, leave the show if it's dark out, be aware of your surroundings. Just be on guard. That's all we're saying. And just be careful and watch out for the little ones. The other thing I should mention too is when it comes to parking at this event, parking's usually pretty easy on Thursday and Friday, especially earlier on. But once you get into Saturday, I can tell you this, you better get there early. A lot of people come on Saturday and Sunday. That parking lot fills up very quickly. It's a huge parking lot. You may end up in a spot where you have to walk some 15 to 20 minutes just to get to the entrance where they're allowing you in for the hockey card show. On top of that, there are other event halls attached to the same building. I think there's 5 total. Now, if they have an event in 1 or 2 of these, then the parking lot fills up even quicker. Just to give you an example, last year when I went, I believe it was on Saturday, they actually had in 2 of the other halls, they were selling, I think it was shoes, type of that warehouse discount type of thing. I got to be honest, the parking was almost impossible, and I got there half an hour early. So just be mindful of that, especially if you're going on Saturday and Sunday, that there will be issues when it comes to parking. Parking is free, I may mention, so just keep that in mind. But if you think it's going to be a problem for you, then maybe you want to think about taking an Uber in or a ride share. So at least this way, they're just dropping you off somewhere. You can just walk in. When you come out, they'll pick you up and away you go. But if you are driving, just be mindful of the parking situation. The last thing I want to talk about that maybe you just want to keep in mind when it comes to that show is there are a lot of great events that happen after the show on every night. What I mean by that is there's a number of people who will have get-togethers at different restaurants. There's a lot of people who will open up a trade night somewhere, whether it's in the hotel or in other parts of the Toronto Sports Card Expo, the International Center. It may be at the end of the day, they start quick little trading sections, if you would. One of the ones that I really look forward to is Jeremy Lee has a wonderful meetup where he just invites everyone in the hobby, and you go there, you're going to meet some great people, you're going to talk about cards, you're going to see some great cards, and you get to talk to Jeremy Lee. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? I know I'd like to do that every single time I'm at the expo. I get to talk to him in person, and he's an interesting person, and the people that show up to these events are also very interesting. So go online. If there's someone you like Jeremy Lee, he's going to post on his socials where and what time, and I highly recommend you check it out. Enjoy it. This is almost like our Super Bowl weekend. If you go to the Super Bowl and you go a few days in advance, there's a lot of cool things happening outside the venue as well as inside, and that's what you want to take advantage of. All of those things that we talked about are just things that I just wanted to kind of put out there so you remember that obviously that the show's coming up in a couple of days. Actually, when you listen to this podcast, the show will be the next day. If you listen to this show when it's released on Wednesdays. That's right, we release a new episode every Wednesday, so definitely next time you want to check out the show, pop in on Wednesday. But as we said, the Sports Card Expo is here. I'm excited. I think you should be excited because we're going to get to look at, possibly buy or trade for some really cool cards, and you're going to see some things you've never seen as far as memorabilia, as well as stars of the game when it comes to things like the autograph area. If you're at the show and you want to say hello, hit me up on our social media account on Instagram at Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Podcast. Let me know. We can meet up somewhere. We can talk about the show. We can talk about my show. We can talk about hockey cards, whatever you want to do. Hit me up, let me know, and I will definitely say hello. So there you have it. There is our excited rant as far as the Toronto Sports Card Expo that'll be happening or starting on the 24th of April and running until the 27th. If you can make it, I highly recommend you go because it is the best hockey card, sports card show I've ever been to. And I've been to Dallas as well as many others in the Boston area. And this one just blows them out of the water, especially for hockey cards. So next, we'll be taking a look at the Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Hockey Card Podcast NHL Power Rankings going into this year's playoffs. But before we do that, we just got through talking about the Sports Card Expo and, cards, and there's a lot of cards. You know where else you can go to check out some really cool cards? It's the sponsor, the only sponsor of this podcast, and it's at My Card Post. So check out this little jingle and learn about My Card Post.
The cards we trade like secrets told in hockey tales, both young and old. My Card Post, the golden street, where deals and hearts of fans both meet. Shuffle the dreams, pass them around on this accordion's lively sound. Let's buy, sell, trade with glee in hand at My Card Post across the land.
One of the things I really love about My Card Post is the owner of that great website. His name is Mark Hill. Now, if you don't know who Mark Hill is, definitely go find My Card Post on social media or YouTube or what have you. You will find Mark Hill. He is a passionate guy when it comes to the trading card world, and he's trying to make a difference. Now, another reason why I like Mark is he's kind of a nutball in the sense of, if you watch, he did a challenge where he basically opened up boxes of PGA golf cards until he got a Bryson DeChambeau signed card. Now, I'll say this, you need to go check it out, but once you watch it, you will understand exactly what I meant by that statement. Now we're moving on. We are going to move into our power rankings for the teams in this year's 2025 NHL playoffs. Basically, what this is I'm going to go through this list and give you which team I think is the weakest, all the way up to who is the strongest team that I think has the best shot at winning the Stanley Cup this year. Now, I have given you my predictions as far as the champion in the past, so if you've listened, you probably know who I'm going to say, but I want to give you all the other teams as far as where I think they fall when it comes to can they win the Stanley Cup or not. Let's start with the first team, which will be the number 16 team on our list, meaning we don't think they have a shot in you-know-what to win the Stanley Cup. Right now, I think everybody listening is going, please don't let it be my team. Please don't let it be my team. Okay, here we go. At number 16 is the New Jersey Devils. I'm really sorry, New Jersey fans. The reason that I have them is I just don't believe in this team. I think there's a lot of talent there. You have guys like Bratt. You have guys like Timo Meier. Who you don't have is the guy, and that's Jack Hughes. That was a huge blow for your team. He is the dynamic player, the goal scorer on your team, the guy that everything runs through, and he's not there. I thought that just destroyed the Devils as far as any hopes of being a good team in the playoffs. The other question mark that I have is the defense. It feels like the defense isn't strong enough to really get through 16 wins to get to the Stanley Cup. Goaltending is okay. Markstrom should be fine, but he will need to be basically unbelievable for the Devils to really even advance out of the first round. Like I said, the main reasons why we have the Devils at number 16 is they are young, they are dynamic, their speed and skill are game changers, but experience is going to be a major issue, I believe, for them. As we said, their talent is undeniable. But the big thing is, Jack Hughes-less Devils, not as good as a team with Jack Hughes. And on top of that, the defense has some big question marks. So I apologize, New Jersey Devils fans, but hey, look at it this way. You guys are in the playoffs. I could be 100% wrong that you could go win the Stanley Cup. My Bruins didn't make the playoffs, so maybe I'm just a little bitter. I don't know. But at least you made it in. And just like every other team on this list, you still have a shot at winning the Stanley Cup. I just think the Devils have the weakest shot. At number 15 on our list are the Montreal Canadiens. Now, the Montreal Canadiens clinched the final playoff spot, and this showed a lot of determination. They really had to come through at the end of the season to get those points, to ward off teams that were right behind them. Now they're in the playoffs for the first time in a while. This is a good thing for the NHL. The NHL needs teams like the Canadiens to be in the playoffs. I mean, let's look at the teams who aren't in the playoffs right now. You have my Boston Bruins. You have the Pittsburgh Penguins who aren't making the playoffs. How about the Chicago Blackhawks who couldn't even sniff out the playoffs from how far back they were? On top of that, Detroit Red Wings, not in the playoffs. There's 4 original 6 teams that did not make the playoffs, but guess what? The Canadiens did. Now, their young core is a solid young core. Nick Suzuki, Yaroslav Slavkovsky, Cole Caulfield, and, oh, by the way, they just picked up this kid named Demidov who looks like the real thing. Now, the young core is definitely what's going to drive that team. They will then be tested on the backside. Now, I know the Canadiens defense has Lane Hudson, great offensive defenseman. Once you get into the NHL playoffs, you know what a lot of teams do? They focus in on the defense and they basically just start running at them. They want to hit them every chance they get, wear them down, because, again, in just a 7-game series, the amount of wear and tear these guys take is crazy. Now times that by 2 or 3 different series. There's my concern. Lane Hudson, first time go through, can he kind of stand up to that kind of abuse that he's going to be taking? Along with the rest of the Montreal D-Corps, they're a decent defensive lineup, but still, like the Devils, I have question marks when it comes to their defense. Another question mark I have is their goaltending. Montembeault has been really good. Is he the starter? Allen, I don't know if I would start him, but again, more veteran presence there. But they've had those issues when it's come to keeping the puck out of the net. So just like the Devils, the Canadiens have that young offensive firepower. They have everybody available, not like the Devils. But again, their defense is going to be the question mark. Their toughness is going to be a question mark. And their goaltending is going to be a question mark. But does the Demidov factor help elevate them maybe out of the first round? We shall see what my thoughts are on that in our next segment. Moving on to the number 14 team as far as our power rankings. And I apologize to the loud collector in advance, and I'm sure I'm going to hear it at some point after he listens to this. And guess what? If he doesn't say anything, is he listening to this podcast? That's something to think about.
Suck it, Trebek!
Well, we obviously have the Senators at number 14 on our list. Now, the Senators are returning to the playoffs for the first time, I believe, since 2017. Now, just like the other teams we mentioned, they have a lot of young offensive firepower at their disposal. Guys like Timmy Stützle, Shane Pinto, who Phil has 1 million of his rookie cards. Guys like Jake Sanderson, the great defenseman who I think is an underrated, undervalued guy. They have a ton of talent. They even have experience with guys like Claude Giroux. That's a guy you want on your team when you're making a playoff push. Now, one of the things, again, that I question when it comes to the Ottawa Senators, plenty of offensive firepower, but not a lot of experience, a lot of youth, and can they really stand up defensively? That's a big question mark again for me, is their defensive core outside of Jake Sanderson. Now, they did acquire the old Bruin goalie, Linus Ullmark, this past season, and that was a smart move. Linus Ullmark is a great goaltender, as you've seen all year. Here's my one concern as a Boston Bruins fan who saw what Linus Ullmark was. Overall, he was great. When he got to that point where him and Swayman were, trading off games, you saw what happened. Everything worked out great. I think that's one of the reasons how the Bruins overperformed in the year after Bergeron and Krejci retired was Swayman and Ullmark stood on their heads and kept those Bruins in games they probably shouldn't have been in. He can definitely do that for the Ottawa Senators. He can help them win a series very easily. He has the experience. He knows what it's like to go through that grind. He went through it with the Bruins. so he has the experience that team needs. He'll be incredibly valuable in the locker room along with Claude Giroux. They can kind of tell these kids, look, this is what needs to happen. This is what you need to do. But again, that defensive core, can they keep teams from scoring more than, let's say, 2 to 3 goals? That's how you have to win in the playoffs. You can't go into the playoffs and expect to have a shootout in every game. There's too many teams, as you'll see on this list as we go higher, that have great defenses and will stop you. So Linus Ullmark's going to have to play great. The young kids are going to have to score goals, and that defense is going to have to step up outside of Jake Sanderson. So that's why we have him down at number 14. Next on the list at number 13 are the Minnesota Wild. Now, they clinched a playoff spot with a pretty strong finish, but they had some stumbling blocks along the way. Kaprizov was out for a while, and as we saw, it was tough for them to produce offensively with them being gone. That's something I worry about when we go into the playoffs with them, and that's why I have them down number 13. It seems like Kaprizov is basically their only scorer. Just like David Pastrnak for the Bruins this year, I have a feeling that this may be a problem for the Minnesota Wild. Now, outside of Kaprizov, who else do they really have to score? Matt Boldy, amazing talent, but as we've seen, sometimes he's not there all the time. Marco Rossi, same thing, but he's more of a setup guy. And again, he goes on stretches where he doesn't produce. Joel Eriksson-Ek, again, nice player, but not a guy who's going to really take over a series because of his scoring adequacy. So if a team can go in there and take away Kaprizov, now you're kind of limited offensively. Are the Minnesota Wild a team who can basically just grind out wins, 3-2, 2-1, whatever the case may be, without having Kaprizov score? We shall see. Now, as far as defensively, they have the great young talent, Brock Faber, who, as we saw in the Four Nations tournament, along with Jake Sanderson, was amazing. So he'll still be one of the top guys. They have a little bit tougher defense as far as, a little more rugged. So that's why I actually had them above the Senators. It was a really kind of close call there. That's why I put them one step up. Their goaltending depth, obviously, then is something that could be a strong force for them. I believe Gustafsson's going to be the starter. He's been pretty solid all year, as long as the defense in front of him kind of stands up. So as you're kind of seeing here, it's like the first 4 teams, really the big question mark is either in goaltending or is the defense going to be tough enough, as we mentioned with all the reasons. So that's why we have the Minnesota Wild at number 13. Number 12, we have the Edmonton Oilers. The only reason the Edmonton Oilers are ahead of a lot of these teams is they have Connor McDavid and they have Leon Draisaitl. Those two guys make up for a lot of a team's inadequacies, whether it's goaltending, defense, offense, because they have the potential to go off and just take over a game offensively to where none of those other things matter. So their offensive firepower is almost unmatched. But here we go again. First question, defense. Are they tough enough to get through, again, a grind? They saw what the grind was last year, and I think one of the main reasons why they didn't win the Cup is the Florida Panthers know how to play that game, and it's going to be reflected by where we have them in the standings. So obviously, that's a major issue. Goaltending is an issue. Defense is an issue. If those two things come together, then we're talking the Edmonton Oilers should probably be higher up on this list. But because of those things, that's why we have them down this far. But if Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl comes through, Evan Bouchard puts points on the board, maybe that can take care of the first round. But again, that second and third round grind. And can they keep producing every single night? Well, we're going to find out. But like those other teams, goaltending and defense is a question. Moving on to number 11 on our list, I have the Washington Capitals. That's right, I did say the Washington Capitals. Now, a lot of people are probably saying to themselves, this is why this guy's an idiot. He has got a team that essentially had 109 points this regular season. They have a guy who just broke the all-time goal-scoring record in Alexander Ovechkin. The team looks solid. Why in the world are they all the way down at number 11? All right, I'm going to give you my reason. This team looks great. They have a lot of great players surrounding Alexander Ovechkin. They also have the type of players that this is a team that's built for a long playoff run. They're tough and they can score goals. A guy like Wilson is a guy who's been through the ringer 100 times over, and he can match up with anyone, not only physically, but also offensively. The Washington Capitals have a very solid, stout defensive core that I would put up against a lot of other teams, and their goaltending is pretty good. I would say a little bit above average. There's a lot of other better goaltenders in this league or in this tournament, but when it comes right down to it, the guys they have are good enough to help them win. But here's the main reason why I believe that the Washington Capitals are down at number 11. They're basically coming off a great year with a lot of hype surrounding them with the Alex Ovechkin all-time goal chase. I have a feeling like now that it's over, I think a big letdown is coming. I don't think they can ride that wave of excellent play along with the hype, especially when you get into the playoffs, because every team kind of equalizes out, and a lot of the times they won in the regular season, I don't think it's going to continue in the playoffs because the competition is just too tough. They had a tough year dealing with all that stuff as far as the Alexander Ovechkin hype. I'm not saying that they're going to be a first-round exit, but again, it just feels like they're ready for a letdown, and I'm kind of thinking that this is going to happen to them. I'm not sure if it's the first round. Again, we're going to go over who I'm picking after this, but I think it's something to do with that Ovechkin record and that, wow, too much hype for too long, and now we're done. Oh, and now we got to get into the playoffs. So that's why I have the Washington Capitals at number 11. Now, surprisingly, I have the St. Louis Blues as my number 10 team in this power ranking. Now, if you recall, they secured their playoff berth with a dominant win. They have a lot of great players on that team who nobody knows about. I mean, Rob Thomas of Not Matchbox 20 is playing unbelievable, and there's not too many people who know about him. There's also guys on that team that are producing on all four lines, and that's a good thing. On top of it, Jim Montgomery is a great coach. He is a great offensive coach, and he can get the most out of offensive players. Now, here's my concerns when it comes to this team. Now, they do have a lot of experience, and they are used to playing in a physical manner, which is why I thought they were higher up on this list than a lot of other teams. And this is beneficial, especially when you're in a tight series, which they all are. My main concern with this team isn't even goaltending. Obviously, Pennington's proven me wrong through the years when he's won games that he should have never won, and he always seems to show up in big moments. We saw it in the Four Nations tournament. I personally experienced that when the Blues ousted the Bruins back in the day in our building where he stood on his head, and you know what? I'm not going down that road. But anyway, they have solid goaltending. They have solid defense, and they have great offense. Here's my issue with this team. It's the coaching. One of the things that I didn't like about Jim Montgomery when he was with the Bruins was during those playoff series, if the game didn't follow the script that they kind of mapped out, we never adjusted well in the game or in the series. And I'll give you an example. You'll recall a couple of years ago when the Bruins were ousted by the Florida Panthers. You recall, not when they won the cup last year before, the Bruins were the President's Trophy winner. They were deep as deep can be, and they had the goaltending, all of that stuff. Should have been a very easy series. In the first few games, Bruins handled them mightily. But then the Florida Panthers changed their approach. They decided to become more physical, more pesty, if you would, kind of get under the Bruins' skin. And guess what? It worked. The Florida Panthers took advantage of that. The Bruins never adapted to that. They should have just did something a little different, kind of maybe the way they rolled out lines. But again, Montgomery just didn't adapt on the fly or within the series. The other thing was the goaltending situation. All year we go basically rotation between Swayman and Allmark. Well, we get into the playoffs that year, and the idea is, well, they each play a game, but then they essentially rode Allmark all the way through. Allmark looked tired. Something was wrong with him. And he really showed up in game 5. You recall when we went out to play the puck, and he just did it lazily, and the puck kicked out, and Matthew Tkachuk scored a goal. He played Allmark in game 6. Allmark just looked completely out of his element. And now in game 7, you decide to bring in the young kid Swayman, who played admirably. But again, you want the veteran in that situation. So that's what I mean. If Jim Montgomery kind of learned from that, and he has a good support staff as far as coaching staff, they need to be able to adjust on the fly, whether it's the offensive or defensive strategy or the goaltending as a whole. That's why I have them this low. They're a great team. I think they are an underrated team who's going to be a tough out and could go further than a lot of people think with all the offensive and defensive firepower they have along with the goaltending, but the coaching needs to come through. Moving on, we are now in the top 10 as far as our power rankings go, and we have the Toronto Maple Leafs. Look at that, Toronto. You're not on the bottom of the pile. You're not far from the midpoint, but you're respectable. Now, as we know, the Toronto Maple Leafs clinched the Atlantic Division for the first time since 1968. Austin Matthews reached 400 career goals. Mitch Marner hit the 100-point mark. And now it seems like the Toronto Maple Leafs have a goaltender. That's right. Anthony Stolarz boasted a .95 save percentage in his last 8 games. That is good news for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So let's go over the obvious. They're definitely a team that can contend for the cup. We've talked about it. They have the offensive firepower. I mean, let's just go down the list. Austin Matthews. They have Mitch Marner, John Tavares, William Nylander. I mean, I could go on. There's Matthew Nyes. They have offensive firepower. They're even a little more grittier now. I've noticed that even some of the bigger guys, Matthews throwing his weight around a little bit. That's a good thing, especially when you get into the playoffs. But you don't want him, really getting too rough because you need him to play in every game. As we mentioned, goaltending seems to be all set. They've got Stolarz ready to go. And I have to say, even the kid in the wings there, Wall, looked pretty good. Again, needs a little more time, but if something happens to Stolarz, I would be okay with him coming in. Here's our question mark. It's defense again. The Maple Leafs addressed that not only in the offseason, but at the trade deadline. They picked up Brandon Carlo from the Boston Bruins. So I'll give you all a little background just because I know Brandon Carlo very well. He will be a difference maker for the Toronto Maple Leafs this playoff season. Now, he's not going to score a ton of goals, but what he is going to do is he's going to be your most secure backline defenseman in front of the net, stay-at-home guy that you guys have. He understands what big pressure situations are playing with the Bruins, whether it's in the game or the series. So he has no issue playing in those high-pressure situations. On top of that, he knows how to win, meaning, hey, Toronto, sometimes you guys get into your own head when things turn. You'll recall the series against the Bruins when you were up, 4-1, and lost that game. Guess who played in that game? Brandon Carlo. He'll be able to talk in that room and say, this is what it takes to get through this, but the rest of the defense needs to listen and stand up and be the defense that is needed to advance on into future rounds. So we're not talking offense. We're not talking goaltending. Oh, and on top of that, the coaching is solid too. So that's not an issue. It's going to come down to the defense for them. And that's why we have the Toronto Maple Leafs at number 9. And number 8, I think this is going to be a little bit of a surprise to some people, but I have the Florida Panthers. Now, I understand they're the defending champions, and they had a season where they had 98 points. Great season. They're a team that knows how to win in the playoffs. We've seen that for the past 2 years. They're a physical team. They're an experienced team. They're an offensively capable team. They're a team that understands their role. And this is what makes them probably the most tough team in the East, as well as the Stanley Cup playoffs. The situation is this. Can the Panthers continue this? They've done it now. This is 3 years in a row where they're going into the playoffs, where they're coming off the last 2 years, getting to the Stanley Cup finals, losing it the first year, but going to the brink, and then winning it the next year, going to the brink. The Florida Panthers are playing a lot of hockey. That's going to take a toll on a team as a whole. Now, as we mentioned, they have a number of guys on that team that can score. We're not going to go down the list. They picked up Brad Marchand, who, here we go again. He knows what it takes to win. He's played for Boston, big games, big series, and he's going to contribute. Sam Reinhart, Sam Bennett, Barkov, Carter Verhaeghe. The list goes on and on. Even a guy like Evan Rodriguez, who you recall the last couple of years, just seems to show up when the playoffs start. And that's why they're going to be a tough team to get, to knock out of the playoffs. They have solid stay-home defense that can score and is physical. Obviously, they have the goaltending with Captain Bob back there. The coaching, I'd say top 3 in the league. I love that guy. I hate playing against him, but this is one of the smartest coaches, Paul Maurice. The two issues are, as we said, have they just played too much hockey over the last couple of years? Top of that, Matthew Tkachuk dealing with an injury. Now, is this just kind of a cat and mouse game where they said, look, heal up, we're going to let you rest, come back, and he's 100% in the playoffs, ready to go? I hope so. But again, playoffs, injuries, problem, because teams are going to know what it is for the most part, and they're going to key in on especially the high talent guys, and they're going to make sure that when they go and lay a check, they get that area that may be bothering them, or just as we said before, keep the pressure on, hit them every chance they get. Is this team rested enough to really take that pounding for a third year in a row? Now, with all of that being said, if the Florida Panthers go in and get to the Stanley Cup Finals and even win it, would I be surprised? Not one bit. Again, the talent's there. It's just I'm questioning, again, the amount of hockey that they've played and the Matthew Tkachuk injury. Moving on to number 7 is the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, Carolina has been a solid team all year. They had a solid 99-point season, one better than the Florida Panthers, and they're a team that's built on strong defensive structure. They're a physical team. They're a tough team. They're also an offensively capable team on top of that. They're a team that's built for the playoffs. They have enough offense. They have a ton of defense. Now we get that again down to the goaltending question. I think they're going to be okay, but at the same time, that might be the weakest point of this team. Now, as we mentioned, they have the depth all the way through the offensive and defensive parts of their team, and the coaching, again, top 3. Rod Brind'Amour, I respect that guy as a player back in the day, and I respect him even more as a coach with the way he's able to take the players he has and just mold them into exactly what the team needs. Then he gives them the right game plans. He's able to adjust on the fly, whether it's in the game or in the series. This is why we have them at number 7. So between their depth, their overall depth, and their coaching, this is why we have them as a consistent playoff threat, or they have been through the years, and this is why we have them at number 7. At number 6, we're going to fly all the way across the country to sunny California for the LA Kings. The LA Kings are, I think, the most unnoticed team that could potentially win the Stanley Cup this year. Now, I understand they play on the West Coast, so they don't get the fanfare because of the whole time difference, but this team is solid. They had a 101-point season this year, which reflects their balanced attack offensively, as well as solid defense and solid goaltending. They're a well-rounded team that's poised to make a strong playoff push. Guys like Kopitar and Kempe are they're amazing. I think, again, they might be two of the most underrated guys in the league. Drew Doughty's back. On top of that, they brought in a couple of players who are playing really well from them. The trades they made and the offensive production that they're getting only strengthen what they had. Young guys are even starting to come through. Quentin Byfield looks like he could be what everyone thought he was going to be as a high draft pick. If all of that comes together, the Kings are definitely going to be a contender for the Stanley Cup. I guess maybe the only question I have is, do they believe that they are Stanley Cup contenders this year? I always say that's something that's important when you're talking about a team. If a team kind of stumbles into the playoffs, there may be a mindset like, yeah, we're probably not going to get that far. I hope the Kings realize they are a great team. They are just missed our top 5 by the slimmest of margins. And when you see the rest of the teams, you'll understand why. But I think they're going to be a team that could be the dark horse to come out of the West. So at number 6, we have the potential dark horse, very solid offensive and defensive minded, as well as goaltending and coaching team. That's the LA Kings. Now we get into the top 5. Now, as you've seen leading up to this, it seems like the bottom teams had question marks at whether it was defensive or goaltending or possibly coaching. The middle of the rung teams, they kind of had a well-rounded team, but again, they had little question marks that maybe will make a difference. Now we get into the teams that should be the top teams that contend. So at number 5, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, the Tampa Bay Lightning need no explanation. They have enough offensive firepower. They have enough defensive capabilities. They're tough. They know how to play in high-pressure situations. I mean, they lost Steven Stamkos, didn't miss a beat. They're a strong team, gunning for the Stanley Cup yet again. And, oh, by the way, they have probably, in my opinion, the best goalie in the league, if not the number 2 goalie in the league, Vasilevsky. On top of that, Cooper, the coach, is, in my mind, the best coach in hockey. So now let's throw all of that into a mixer and throw it into the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. And what do you get? You get a team that's going to be really difficult to beat. And that's the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't even think we have to go on anymore. Would it surprise me if the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup, even being at number 5 on our power rankings? It shouldn't, because in the back of my mind, I feel like that could happen. Number 4 on our list, the Vegas Golden Knights. This team looks like the Bruins team from 5 years ago. Bruce Cassidy, ex-Bruins coach, he's already won them a cup, but he's kept them competitive through the years. Now, they were the Pacific Division champions. They are deep. They are playoff tested all the way through their roster. They have a balanced offensive attack and a very strong defensive mindset that will make them a very difficult out. Their goaltending situation, slight bit of a question mark, but the reason why they're up this high is because their defense is that solid. I mean, you have guys on the offensive side, they're going to put in pucks in the net. Jack Eichel, I hope he comes through. He had a pretty good Four Nations tournament where people started to take notice of him. Now is the time to capitalize on that, produce in the Stanley Cup final or in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you will be recognized. This team, well-rounded all the way around. They know how to win. They know how to win tough series. And that's why we have them at number 4. That's the Vegas Golden Knights. Okay, here we go. Top 3. With the number 3 pick as far as our 2025 NHL Playoff Power Rankings, we have, well, it's either going to be the Avalanche, the Stars, or the Winnipeg Jets, because that's the only 3 teams that are left in the playoffs. So who do you think's at number 3? I'll give you a second. Okay, here we go. At number 3, we have the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the Winnipeg Jets secured the President's Trophy this year with 114 points. This is the first time the Jets have ever won the President's Trophy. So congratulations to them for that. Now, on top of that, they have what could be the best goaltender in the league. Again, I argue between him and Vasilevsky, and this is Connor Hellenbuck. He's obviously in contention for the Vezina. He's probably the favorite, I would say. On top of that, they have a very balanced offense which makes them difficult to play against when it comes to a lot of teams in this Stanley Cup playoffs. They have a very good defensive core, too. They have an offensive-minded defensive core as far as guys like Morrissey, who match up well with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. Now, here's the question. The President's Trophy jinx. I experienced it personally with the Boston Bruins a few years ago. Is that going to be a factor for them? Is the fact that they had such a great season going to be a letdown, just like the Washington Capitals? We shall see. When it comes to as far as who's going to be one of the toughest teams to knock out, they are definitely on the top of that list, and that's why we have them at number 3. Now, again, we'll go through their matchup, and I'll give you my opinion. Do they move on from the first round, or do they get nipped by the President's Trophy? I don't know if you want to call it curse. I hate to use that word, but you know what I mean. We're at the final 2 spots as far as our power rankings. And without further delay, we're just going to tell you the number 2 team is the Colorado Avalanche. Now, you should know that by now because, as I mentioned, we mentioned that we love the Dallas Stars to win the Cup, but Colorado being as high up as they are on this list was actually a real surprise to me. They finished the season with 102 points. So again, another great season. They remain an offensive powerhouse with guys like Nathan MacKinnon and a defenseman named Cale Makar. Now, they did vacate Mikko Rantanen, who was a big-time force on that team as a great playoff player. They got something back. Not in the trade, but as far as on the injury front. That's right, Gabe Landeskog is now back in the mix. Now, I hate the idea that he's coming back right when the playoffs start. I mean, I know he played a few games, whether it was in the AHL or a few NHL games, but still, he's back. He should be able to help them out, but I just really am worried about the fact that he's not going to get up to speed quick enough. Now, on top of that, their goaltending situation, pretty good. Their defensive situation, it's okay. It's not the best of the top bunch here, but here we go again. Guys like Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar, they can make up for, let's call it, a weak defense. The reason why I have them at number 2 is this. I just always have this vibe that there's this one team in the playoffs that had a good season, but no one's really paying attention to. That's why I have them as the number 2 team. If it wasn't for the fact that I have Dallas winning the Stanley Cup, if let's say it was a team out of the East, like the Lightning, I would probably still have Colorado at number 2 and maybe Dallas a little bit further down. But Colorado, to me, is that team that I think no one's paying attention to. And I think that's going to be a mistake. I think they're going to be a very difficult out, especially if they can get going offensively and goaltending maintains the line. They will be a tough team to beat. They're going to be an impossible out, and that's why we have them at number 2. Even though they lost Mikko Rantanen, they got Landeskog back, and they're playing good as a unit. As we said, no suspense here. Dallas Stars are our number 1 team. So let's look at the Dallas Stars. Now, they finished this season with 106 points. So what does that show us? Well, it shows us their depth across all lines. Oh, by the way, they picked up some guy in a trade that we just mentioned. I think he started in, Colorado, went to Carolina, and then via, a bus made it to Dallas. That's right. They got Mikko Rantanen. Now, lately, he's been dealing with some injury issues, but hopefully, I think he'll be back. On top of it, let's go down the list. Jason Robertson, Wyatt Johnston, Rupe Hintz. I mean, one of the best pickups ever, Matt Duchene, who is playing amazingly, and I think he's playing on the 3rd line. Oh, by the way, they have what I think is one of the, I think he's number 3 on my list as far as goaltenders, Jake Ottinger. They have a solid defensive core, and the coach, he knows how to win games, as we saw with the 106-point season. They have all the pieces that it takes to win the Stanley Cup. They're a tough team, they're a defensively sound team, and they're a team that can put a lot of goals in the net. This is a team that feels like a Stanley Cup championship team to me. I liked them at the beginning of the season. I liked them even when they were kind of struggling through the season, and I like them even more now. So that's why I have Dallas as the number one team in our power ranking, and I'm basically saying that they're going to win the Stanley Cup. Now, as far as who they're going to play against, well, that's another discussion for another day. So let's go down our list starting at number one, just so you can kind of get a summary as far as our power rankings, starting with the strongest team on our page, all the way down to what we think is the weakest team. As we said, number one, Dallas Stars. Number two, the Avalanche. Number three, the Winnipeg Jets. Number four, the Vegas Golden Knights. Number five, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Number six, the LA Kings. Believe in yourself, LA. Number seven, Carolina Hurricanes. Number eight, the Stanley Cup champions, defending Stanley Cup champions, Florida Panthers. At number 9, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs, who made it into the top 10. At number 10, we have the Blues. Number 11, the Alexander Ovechkin Washington Capitals. At number 12, we have the Edmonton Oilers. 13, hey, Minnesota, you're wild. Maybe they can surprise us all and really make me look foolish and win or even get to the Stanley Cup Finals, but we have them at number 13. Number 14, we have the Ottawa Senators. I believe in this team moving forward. It's just right now, there just seems like there's a few holes. And same thing holds true for our number 15 team, which is the Montreal Canadiens. And we round it off with what we think is the weakest team, and that's the New Jersey Devils. So with this being said, this is just our opinion. This is what I think. Would it surprise me if the Ottawa Senators go deep into the playoffs? No, not one bit. Would it surprise me if the Jets or the Avalanche get knocked down the first round? No, not one bit. The reason why I say that is because, as you all know, when it comes to the NHL playoffs, anything can happen, and anything usually does happen. That was an interesting segment. We gave you our power rankings as far as this is the order, the strength of the teams that we believe in. Now let's get to the important things and say, let's look at the first round matchups and let's figure out who I think is going to advance. For our final segment, we're going to take a look at the actual matchups or the first round matchups. And I'm going to give you my opinion as far as who I think is going to win and kind of what the summary as far as games is going to be, as far as the final outcome, and just some thoughts on some of the players who are playing in these series. So I'm going to start with the West. And I want to start with one of the most intriguing matchups, and that's the Los Angeles Kings against the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the reason why I'm starting with them is because for the past few years, this has been the same first round matchup when it comes to the Kings playing the Oilers. How is it going to go this year? Well, as we said before, the Kings are loaded. Guys like Kempe and Kopitar are ready to go, along with guys like Kevin Fiala, who's having a great season. I mean, he reached the 35-goal plateau this year, along with Quentin Byfield. They look solid. Still, though, you're talking about the Edmonton Oilers. And we can't talk about the Edmonton Oilers without Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Now, Leon Draisaitl had 44 goals this season. Solid season for Leon Draisaitl. Connor McDavid, as we said, 100 points. But health is a question. If he's got an injury, a nagging injury, we know what happens in the playoffs. Hey, Zach Hyman, do you still remember how to score goals or be an offensive threat? That's someone else that kind of needs to get things going. So my overall thoughts are this. I think this is a really great matchup in the sense that you have the defensively minded and strong Kings who can score plenty of goals with good goaltending against a highly offensive output team with average defense and okay goaltending. Can the Edmonton Oilers' offensive firepower beat out the LA Kings' well-rounded team? I'm going to say, in my opinion, no. I think the Kings win this series, and I actually think they do it pretty handily. I think the Kings come out of the first round beating the Edmonton Oilers 4-2. So I think the Kings are ready this year if they believe in themselves. You just got to believe, and they can win. Edmonton's vulnerable right now, and I think we might see that kind of show up in the first round. So as we said, I have the Kings winning 4-2 to move on out of the first round. Next, going to take a look at the Vegas Golden Knights against the Minnesota Wild. We talked about the Golden Knights and everything they've got going for them. I mean, they even have a guy like Brandon Saad, who is he's one of those guys that you want in the playoffs. Now, as we talked about with the Wild, Kirill the Thrill dollar bill is back. That's going to help them. Matt Boldy is should be another great playoff kind of player. He's built for the playoffs. He's a big guy who can score goals. He just can't disappear, along with Marco Rossi, along with Joel Eriksson Ek. Those guys need to show up. They need to play responsible hockey, especially in their end, and goaltending needs to be what it's been all season. Who do I have coming out of this series? I got to be honest with you. This is a tough one for me. I don't think it's going to be as easy for the Golden Knights as everybody thinks. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that I think the Golden Knights do win this, but I think they win it in Game 7. That's right. I think the Golden Knights, or I should say, I think the Minnesota Wild are going to take them 7 games. And would it surprise me if the Wild win it? No. I do think, though, when it comes right down to it, that the Knights are better built for a tougher series. So that's why basically I have them winning this series, but by the slightest of margins in Game 7. Now, next, we're going to move on to the series of what I think is going to be an excellent series, and that's the Winnipeg Jets against the St. Louis Blues. Winnipeg, we know, depth all the way around. Connor Scheifele, Connor Hollenbuck, probably going to win the Vezina. Great defenseman in Morrissey, and again, just a solid all-around team. President's Trophy winning team. But we shall see. The Blues, we talked about Jordan Binnington. We talked about not Matchbox 20 Rob Thomas, as well as guys like Pavel Buchnevich, who's been solid this year. So who do I have coming out of the first round as far as the Jets and the Blues? I have the Blues winning, and I think that they win in 7. I know, I'm probably an idiot, but at the end of it all, I just don't really believe in the Jets. I think they were a solid team all year long, but this team doesn't know what it's like to grind out a playoff series or grind out towards a Stanley Cup. They've usually been a disappointing team when they've been good through the years. I think the Blues have caught fire at the right time. I do believe in the players they have, the goaltending they have, as well as the coaching that they have. I think Jim Montgomery has learned from his mistakes with the Bruins, and he won't repeat them with the Blues. So that's why I have the Blues upsetting the Jets in the first round in 7 games. Next, we have the series that, if you're not watching this series, you are not a hockey fan. It's my number 1 and my number 2 teams on my power ranking, and it's the Dallas Stars versus the Colorado Avalanche. Now, many of you may be thinking to yourself, hey, idiot, why did you have a team at number 1 and number 2 on your power rankings that are playing each other that basically one of them is going to get knocked out in the first round? So you've knocked out one of your top 2 teams in your power ranking. Okay, I'm going to give you the answer for that. The answer is simply this. I believe if the Stars don't win this series, I think the Avalanche are going to win the Stanley Cup. Yeah, that's right. You heard it. My number 2 team to win the Stanley Cup is the Colorado Avalanche. As we said, the Dallas Stars, they are just loaded all the way through their lineup. We've gone through that ad nauseum. They also have an incredible goaltender and great coaching. The Colorado Avalanche aren't far off from that. They have Makar. They have McKinnon. They have other great players, Nichas. I mean, we can go down the list of their talent too. I mean, they had a guy like Charlie Coyle from the Bruins who, again, great He's not a huge goal scorer, but he's been in this situation before. He knows what it takes to win big games playing with the Bruins, and he's going to bring that to the locker room. Nathan MacKinnon has already won a cup, so he understands what it takes. So with all of that being said, with these being my number one and my number two, I guess you could say power ranking teams, who's going to win? You should know that answer. The answer is the Dallas Stars. But how many games is it going to take? I think the Dallas Stars win this. I'm going to say it this way. I think it goes to Game 7. And I think Game 7 is going to be an overtime game with Dallas prevailing. The main reason why I've actually thought about this even at the beginning of the year, saying it's going to be one of these two teams. And I'm going to tell you the one thing that I think gets it across the finish line is going to be the goaltending. I think Dallas has a slight edge in goaltending over the Colorado Avalanche. That's why I have it going to 7. That's why I have Game 7 as an overtime. And I'm going to say this. I think the guy who scores the overtime winning goal in Game 7 of this series is Matt Duchene. Just putting it out there. And when it doesn't happen, you can call me an idiot. So there you go. There's the Western Conference as far as who we think is going to come out of the first round, by how many games, and just some quick thoughts. Now, let's move on to the Eastern Conference. So starting off in the Eastern Conference, we're going to start with the easiest one, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes against the New Jersey Devils. Look, I'm not even going to waste time talking about this. Sorry, Devils fans. Without Jack Hughes, I don't see any hope of you winning this. I think Carolina is just too deep, too strong, and again, you're missing a key player. I know guys like Brad and Nico Heishire, and yeah, I understand that, but Jack Hughes is really the fuel that keeps this team, at least offensively, on the up and up. And let's be honest, Carolina is just so solid. So I'm picking Carolina to win. I think it's going to be, I hate to say it, a sweep. I think Carolina wins 4-0. And it's only because, as we said, New Jersey, Jack Hughes is really a big, big, big part of why you're not going to go too far in the NHL playoffs. Next, we're going to talk about the Washington Capitals and their opponents, the Montreal Canadiens. So Washington, solid all the way around. Alexander Ovechkin, decent goaltending, very good defense, coaching, all of that. Talked about them. They even have a lot of young talent, but they don't lack the experience. Dylan Strome, I think, is going to be an MVP for them in this series, and obviously Alexander Ovechkin is the man, so we'll leave Washington there. Montreal, can you do it? You're young, you're talented, you're fast, you know how to put up a lot of points on the board. You're getting decent goaltending from a young goaltender. Can they do it? I'm going to say no, unfortunately. I think Washington's 1 year away from being a really serious team in the NHL playoffs. I'm sorry, I meant to say that Montreal is a year away from being a really serious contender in the NHL playoffs. Washington's just too loaded. I don't think there's going to be a surprise in this series. I think Washington handles them pretty easily. I think it's going to be a 4-1 victory for the Capitals. Now, with that being said, does that mean the Canadian season is a bust? I don't believe so. It's something to build off of for next year. We love original 6 teams in the playoffs. So thank you, Montreal, for representing the original 6 teams. It's just unfortunate that you're running into that brick wall that is the Washington Capitals. From this series, I have the Washington Capitals winning 4-1 to move on to round 2. Next, we're going to take a look at another great series down in the Sunshine State, and that is the Tampa Bay Lightning against the Florida Panthers. So starting with the Panthers, we went through all the great players that they have. They've been here before. They've been there the last 2 years, and they have one of the greatest goaltenders in the league, great defense, great coaching. They added Brad Marchand along some other pieces. They look like they're ready to make a run. But they're running into the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, Tampa Bay, as we talked about, Nikita Kucherov is the guy. This guy could score from anywhere with probably a blindfold on. On top of that, they have Vasilevsky, who's a top 2 goaltender in the league, I think could contend for the Vezina too. I know Connor Hellenbuck's kind of looking like the guy, but if you take Vasilevsky off the Lightning, I don't even think the Lightning make the playoffs this year. They're a good team, but he really carried them at times when they didn't perform either offensively or the defense was letting down, and he had to come through and make timely saves. And he's the guy that does it. Oh, and by the way, he'll show up in the playoffs because didn't they win 2 Stanley Cups in a row and almost a third with this guy in net? Oh, on top of that, they have Braden Point, who is, I'm going to say, the most underrated player in the league now. I think he's surpassed Mikko Rantanen as far as whether it's card value or just overall play. Braden Point is someone I would love to have on my team. He reminds me of a faster, more offensively skilled Patrice Bergeron. Then they added depth at the trade deadline, so they're poised to make a run. So with all of those factors in play, who do I think wins this series? I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I know, I'm going with the Lightning. And the main reason is this. I think Florida's tired. I think they need a season where they're kind of out, and this way they can go on the beach and no Stanley Cup buzz. You know, Matthew Tkachuk is dealing with an injury. If he's not 100%, this thing's going to be over quick. I feel like the Lightning will just kind of come through. Again, Florida's played a lot of hockey. That's why I have them winning. But I'm going to say this. I think this game goes to 7. I should say this series goes to 7 games, with the Lightning winning in Game 7. So there's my next pick, the Lightning beating the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers in 7 games. Here's the matchup a lot of people are wanting me to talk about and can't wait to see on the TV screen. We're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs against the Ottawa Senators. So 2 great Canadian teams that are going to kick it off, and we can't wait. This is probably my number 2 series that I'm really excited about. Obviously, Colorado and Dallas is my first one, but man, this one really has grabbed my interest. Now, we talked about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Austin Matthews, he's the guy. Love that guy. But is he healthy? Mitch Marner surpassed his 100-point season, but like we talked about, you get into the playoffs, guess who they're going to start focusing in on? Mitch Marner goes in the corner. I can guarantee you someone's running him into the boards. Can he hold up? You remember from past episodes I've said for Toronto to be a contender, they need to shore up their goaltending as well as their defense. And that's what they've done. I feel like Brandon Carlo will be a factor in this series to help Toronto to overcome some of those little hiccups defensively. Now we turn to the other side of the ice, and there we have the Ottawa Senators, who looked great all season. All joking aside, this team looks solid. A lot of young talent, a lot of speed, a lot of offensive capabilities. Jake Sanderson on the back end is just, this guy is, I'm going to say this. I think Jake Sanderson is a better all-around defenseman than Quinn Hughes. I'm just going to say that outright. With that being said, can this team with all this youth get through the pressure of a playoff series? Toronto Maple Leafs fans know that feeling oh too well. They have had young teams that were very talented that, again, get into the playoffs and don't come through because the playoffs are a different animal. Can the Senators get through that? Now, with players like Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle, they have that youthful, energetic core. Brady Tkachuk needs to be a difference maker like he was in the Four Nations tournament. But at the same time, is he 100% healthy? Now, I think almost every hockey player right now is probably not 100% healthy, but I feel like there's something going on there. I'm not quite sure. Maybe you Ottawa Senator fans, the Loud Collector in general, can let me know. Is Brady Tkachuk 100%? Because that's kind of my deciding factor. If he's 100%, the Ottawa Senators are going to make this a really good series. Don't forget, they have Ullmark back there. But I will caution Ottawa Senator fans that when it comes to Ullmark, Sometimes he gets the yips in the playoffs, like you saw with the Bruins in game 4 and 5 and 6. I just hope that doesn't happen to him this year. I hope he learned from it, and I hope he's well rested enough so where he could just really carry it through the playoffs. So those are my kind of reasoning, but now you're all going, well, that's great. Pick a winner. Who do I think's going to win this series between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Ottawa Senators? I got to be really, really, really honest with everybody right now. Everything in my heart wants me to pick the Ottawa Senators. I respect this team. I respect the fan base. I love what this team looks like. I love Brady Tkachuk, Stützle, Shane Pinto, Sanderson, Allmark. I love all those guys. I don't think you win the series, unfortunately. I think you're going to lose this series 4-2. The only reason behind it, I just have to be honest with you, is I don't know what you guys are as far as tough. Now, I know Brady Tkachuk is tough. I don't know who else on that team is tough. And it's my fault. I don't know. I haven't watched enough Ottawa Senators games, so I could be completely wrong here. I would recommend, if I am wrong, hit me up on the social media account, Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Podcast. Let me know what I'm missing. I think they lose 4-2 to the Maple Leafs. Part of that reason is, like we said, they have the goaltending in Toronto now. They have the defense on paper. They have a great coach. Offensive capability was never an issue with Toronto. I just don't know if Ottawa's ready this year. Now, next year, different story. They can maintain this team. If this was the matchup next year, I'm going with Ottawa all day. It's just right now, my heart wants to pick you guys in Ottawa, but I can't do it. So that's why I have the Toronto Maple Leafs coming out, winning 4-2 against the Ottawa Senators. Now, this is the series where if Ottawa wins, I would not be surprised one bit. If that happens, Ottawa Senator fans, you let me know about it. You tell me exactly what I said, when I said it, on this date for this podcast. You hit me up. You let me know. So there you have it. There are my picks for the first round of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Again, what do you think? Am I completely wrong? Am I right on some, wrong on others? Or am I just a fool and don't know what I'm talking about? Either way, let me know. Hit me up on the Instagram page or leave a comment on Spotify and let me know what you think about my power rankings and my picks for the playoffs that are about to start. And there you have it. There's the siren to end our podcast. Now, if you've listened to this podcast, we usually say there's the siren to not only end our period, but to end our podcast as well. Unfortunately, as you've seen, this thing ran pretty long. And if an NHL period ran this long, could you imagine if NHL periods were 60 minutes long? Oh man, I think there'd be a player left in the NHL with the abuse that they would take. But either way, it's the end of our podcast. Now, as you heard, we talked about basically our power rankings and what each series, as far as who's going to win and in how many games and our thoughts behind them. Then we talked about the Toronto Sports Card Expo, that if you're listening to this on Wednesday, when it's released, the expo starts the next day. We're kind of Terminator timelining you here. You know, I'm basically talking to you now for the future that may happen on Wednesday next week. You know how that works. Just go and watch Terminators 1 through, 7 now? One thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about the Sports Card Expo is, hey, what am I looking for when I go up there? Well, this year I have a little bit of a plan, but a little different plan. I don't have a ton of individual players or cards or types of cards that I'm looking for. My thought is this. I'm kind of leaving myself open. I mean, I collect guys like David Pastrnak, Bobby Orr, Austin Matthews, but I'm going to keep my eye out for players and cards that I like of those players. I'm also going to keep my eye out for deals, like on Young Guns or Future Watch Autos or just cool cards. But I really want to just kind of keep it open for, I want something that just grabs me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I look at it and the price is right or the card just looks right. So I'm kind of leaving myself open to that. I am going to explore some of the bins, if you would. So not just the showcases. I'm going to look through some bins with autos and cool cards. Not necessarily dollar bins, but, you know, the $10 and $20 bins. just because I'm kind of interested to see what's in there. But like I said, I'm really looking for stuff that just grabs me. I mean, if I come across a Brock Faber Future Watch Auto card and the price is right, you know what? That might be in my possession. There is one, let's call it, type of card that I'm kind of focusing in on as far as really keeping my eye out for. I'm going to try to find a Sidney Crosby either rookie auto patch of some kind. I mean, maybe Future Watch Auto or Young Gun. I'm kind of thinking I don't have anything Sidney Crosby rookie in my collection, so I think I'm going to have to kind of look for something in his world. Now, I'd love to get like a really nice, patch auto. That would be great. I don't know if I can afford maybe some of these cards. I'm going to price it out. And if I can't, I'm going to pivot. And I will look for a Sidney Crosby auto card. Now, one of the cards that I would love to get that's a non-rookie card of him is a Sidney Crosby where he's wearing the alternate, that baby blue, if you would, jersey. And if the signature could be in a different color other than black, maybe if it's in the blue, that would be cool too. Kind of keeping myself open as far as cards go. That's something I'm focusing in on. But at the same time, anything that grabs me or something that I typically collect, I'm definitely going to be looking for that. Oh, and by the way, I'll be buying boxes too because, I'm a fool. I rip boxes and it's fun. So with all that being said, if you come across any of that or see something that I might like, shoot me a message on the Instagram page, shoot me a picture, let me know where the card is. Or if you see me, hey, let me know. Come up to me, say hello. Let's have a conversation about the podcast, about the Toronto Expo, about hockey cards. Heck, you want to even talk Pokemon cards? Sure, I know a little bit about that. Not a lot, but a little bit. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be kind of moseying into the Pokemon section to kind of look for some cards. I love the art. That I'm not really into it for flipping them. I'm just kind of into them for the art side of it. I hold on to them for a little bit and then I move on from them. It's just a fun little in-between the NHL season that I like to do. I did it with other sports cards, but now I'm kind of doing Pokemon cards, and I'm enjoying it as far as it being a new experience that I'm learning. As always, we want to thank you for tuning into the podcast. We look forward to seeing you and talking to you at the Toronto Expo. And I will say to you at the Expo the same thing I'm going to say now. I appreciate you listening to this little podcast. I know our numbers are really good and they grow every day. And that's because of people who have listened to this podcast for a while, as well as the people who are just finding it now. We hope you continue on. As mentioned, we drop a new episode every single Wednesday. And if you've missed any of these episodes, or if this is your first episode, we say welcome. And if you want to check out our older ones, well, go on Spotify, Apple Music, or even go on to YouTube where you can hear the audio version of this as well. Episode number 100 is coming soon, and we're going to have some big announcements that we're going to have on that episode, as well as a really, really cool show. Not going to give you any hints, not going to give anything away, but I promise you this. If I'm jacked up about it now, you should be, because it's going to be a great show, and I'm looking forward to it. For the Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Hockey Card Podcast, I'm your host, Jay. Hope to see you up there in Toronto, but as always, as we said before, please travel safe and be safe once you're up there. But we look forward to seeing you. So we'll see y'all real soon.
The Top Shelf Cookie Sniper Hockey Card Podcast. Talking